Welcome, everybody. And I want to let you know we are going to record this session and share it with everyone who registered afterwards as well. Welcome, welcome. So nice to see this incredible global community here, and welcome all of you. Warm, warm welcome. Yeah, thank you for joining us for this very special session today. We're so happy that you've made this time to be here. And as I shared already, we are going to record this session and share it with anyone who registered afterwards. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Natasha, and I'm here with my partner, Lorenz. We are the co-founders of Sutra.co, which is a platform designed around group relational learning experiences online. And if you'd like to know more, you can just go to Sutra.co. And our intention with our work with creating and evolving Sutra is to bring more love and connection into the world. It's really that simple. And at the heart of our work is helping creators bring more meaningful connection into the spaces they create online. And so today we are so excited to welcome Arawana Hayashi and Kosha Jubert into a conversation with Lorenz to explore how to work with embodiment and attuned presence in groups. We will also have some time for short breakouts and invite you for some question and answer time at the end. So I know we have a lot to get into today. So Lorenz, I'm going to pass it over to you to get us started, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. And if you've been with us for a while, you know that we do like to start our time together with just a few moments of really landing in the space. And today I'm going to invite Kosha to lead us through a few moments of grounding. Kosha, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lawrence and Natasha, and really lovely to be here today with you, Arawana, and all of you. I'm excited about the topic and the conversation, and excited about getting to know the space that we co-create here. So, yeah, the first and very precious ingredient we bring to this space is our presence. So let's start by just taking a moment to go deeply inside and connect to this root of presence that always moves through our body. And you might use your breath to point the way. And just take a moment to notice how this instrument, an intricacy of so many layers of evolution, of beingness, of our being flowing into the space through our physical presence. Maybe as you allow your body to be more fully felt, and to show up more fully by being felt, attuned to, you can also allow a deeper rooting to take place, allowing gravity to bring you home to the particular space that you're sitting in, to the roots that ground you into the earth below, into the planetary sphere, the life systems that you have grown out of, the ancestral roots that take you deep back in time, And also let's take a moment to connect to our emotional space that we bring present here through our physical body. As we turn to soften our hearts, soften towards ourselves, really, bring our compassion towards ourselves to notice what is truly alive in me right now, in my emotional embodiment. And we might notice our mind being present, but also becoming more spacious as we allow our mind space to ground in body, in emotional self, in being here now. And I invite our higher intention for coming here. We've all had a curiosity, a spark of interest that has brought us here, but also a care, a wishing to learn together, a wishing to come together. Maybe you just allow yourself to be touched by your own curiosity, creativity, care, and also by the collective body of care and curiosity that comes together in this space. Let's just complete by taking a moment to really honor this collective body that we co-create. You might notice the movement in you from focusing on self to sensing the collective. Now let's take a few breaths as we deepen and relax into this collective space also. As we open our eyes slowly, if they were closed, we might just welcome each other through our eyes and our presence here on the screen. Thank you for being here. And back to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Kosha, for that wonderful opening. And before we start, I do want to do a quick check-in with our collective audience here. And just a question about your experience working with embodiment and attunement practices. So I'm just posting that in the chat. But if this is something that's relatively new to you, or intermediate or advanced, I'd like to just get a quick read on the audience here. If you could just share in the chat, new, intermediate, or advanced. All right, good. I see quite a few intermediate and advanced, a few new. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. I am really, really honored and excited to be having this conversation today. Warm welcome to Kosha and Arawana. And I'll just share briefly, one of the reasons I'm so excited about this is just because how much influence the body of work that you represent has had on me, on not just my professional work, but my personal life. Kosha, you and I had our first conversation, I think about 4 years ago. And that was actually one of the first times I really heard about Thomas's work, and that opened up a whole universe of working with presence and attunement. And it really awoke in me something that I had already been doing, but then I realized there was a thing. And that was really powerful for me. And in Arawana, I first discovered social presencing theater. I think it was in 2015 and 16. And similarly, it introduced me to a whole new world of communication with my body. I've been involved with my body I've been a very embodied person for 20 years, with fitness and yoga, but never really considered using my body as an instrument of perception in quite the way that you've introduced to social presencing theater, which I just find so incredibly powerful, and it's gone on to really deeply influence the work that we do and what we share with the world. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to explore these the intersections here, and I'd like to start just with a simple question. I think also this question of embodiment and attuned presence maybe means slightly different things to different people, and it would be really nice to hear a little bit about what it means to you, and also why you feel this work is important in the world today. Because I know for myself, I feel like we're having an interesting screen share situation happening in the middle of our call. Okay. Zoom magic. For me, I personally feel like that embodiment and attuned presence is truly fundamental to the evolution of humanity and social transformation. But I'm going to stop right there, and I'd love to hear for you. What does embodiment and attuned presence mean, and why do you feel it is important today? Would either like to go first? Like to go first?
I think, Arawana, I just spoke, so I'd love you to go start us off here.
Thank you so much, Lorenz, for this invitation. I'm so pleased and honored to be able to be in this conversation with you and Kosha. And really appreciate so much interest from people. So I think my answer is really simple, that we all have bodies. And the word that came to my mind when you were asking the question, Lorenz, was ancient. That as long as there have been people, they sit and stand and walk and lie down and gesture and perform tasks and express themselves. And there's so much knowing in this body. It knows, it carries in the bones, carries in the flesh, so much, so much resonance with life for so long. But it also knows freedom. And attending to the body, whether it's the earth's body or our body or the social body that Kosha referred to, we as the social body, the collective body. The tuning into that gives us access also to freedom and to this very moment's openness, as well as its restrictions and container and sufferings. So it seems like now on the planet we need everything we've got, one of which is bodies. So I think that would be my way of introducing my own thoughts on this, that we have so many challenges now. And we need all of our wisdom, and there's so much in the body.
Yeah, beautiful, Arawana. I'm already enjoying listening to you. And also it's so easy for me to build on what you shared, so yeah, because one thing is, Lawrence, when we had our first conversation, I was still serving as leader of the Global Eco-Village Network, right? And I shifted my work to what is now the Pocket Project, working on the restoration, the healing of individual, ancestral, and collective trauma, because I found that in this body and in the social body, and in the planetary body, we carry this incredible resonance and sensitivity and depth. And we carry it in two ways, that we carry the wisdom that has been growing in us over thousands and thousands of years of evolution. And we also carry an archaeological residue of unprocessed past, of aspects of experience that could not flow through our nervous systems and be reintegrated, but that are sitting with us. They're sitting between us. They're visible in the outer world, in the climate crisis and the weather pattern changes, and they're visible in our body. They're palpable. And the reality that this is our closest piece of nature, but also this is like the magical mystery entrance to everything. And that we can literally, through our bodies, travel into our ancestral nervous systems. We can travel into the collective body. We can travel into the planetary body. And, because of the layers of pain, I feel like there's a tendency that has grown over time and has expressed itself in a unhealthy culture of disembodiment, where it's actually better not to be in the body because there's a lot of pain here. So a lot of tendency towards disembodied, which makes the work that you do, Arawana, and so many of us, to actually come back home so important, because this is where we can meet the information, the feedback of the world, the information of the world as it wishes to be listened to and expressed through us. And this is where the healing can start.
Beautiful. This brings me to an area that I'm curious to explore, that reminds me of a practice that I did a few years ago called symptomatic dance. So this was a shamanic teacher that was offering a movement practice of tuning into a pain in your body, and then basically, I mean, very much what I experienced with the stuck exercise with this social presencing theater, but with a different context, almost like feeling the stuck of the pain in your body, maybe a trauma or something, and then moving through that. And it's really interesting to me, this intersection of that and social presencing theater. There's a word that you used, Kosha, about making visible, these things that are invisible and making visible. And then there's the system inside ourselves, and then there's the system of the systems of the world that we operate in. So Arawana, I'm curious about just your thoughts on this intersection of maybe what Kosha's talking about a little bit around these maybe deeper layers of what's invisible and the trauma, and also just how your perspective on how social presencing theater or movement can make some of that visible.
I am in this conversation partially as a learner. My background is really in dance, right, and in the theater, and I don't have. I'm a learner in the work on trauma and on identity and on ancestors, many areas which are so profound. And my own background has been more in the arts and on creative process and its relationship or how it emerges from a meditative practice. So if I could bring in that side of things in a way that I think it's almost like an assumption maybe, and perhaps a value, that the body and the mind, right, are often, as Kosha said, are often disconnected, right? There's a mind that's thinking about this and that. It remembers the past. It has stories about why this happened and what I should have done or what they should have done. And it imagines a future and it comments on this and that. It has its own assumptions, opinions, and belief systems. And then there's a body, which goes about walking and sitting down, and it has its own life, making lunch, whatever. And these two things are oftentimes disconnected. There's no synchronization between the body and the mind, which means simply that we don't actually feel the body. So I think when Kosha said disembodied, for me, that means I don't actually experience my feet stepping on this earth. I don't experience my back sitting on this chair. I don't actually notice it because I'm thinking or looking at the screen and not paying attention to the embodied presence. So in our work, there's a lot of emphasis that this coordination of the body and the mind, this synchronization, what we call a sense of being, it fosters a sense of well-being, not based upon circumstances. In other words, it's not about whether I'm happy or not happy, or whether I'm successful or not successful. It's based on the simple sense that I'm a human being. You know, perfectly good example of a human. It could be improvement, of course, but I'm a human being and I'm sitting on this earth, under this sky, with all of you right now, and that's enough. I don't need to improve on that situation. So we're tuning into the basic healthiness of that moment as a basis for social innovation or for creativity, holding in mind and in body enormous sorrow, enormous sadness, enormous rage and confusion. It's in the body-mind system. But what our practice does is letting go of the story around that, of trying to lighten up on the story so that the healing part is kind of more on the level of just now. It feels like this, it feels like this, it feels like this. So staying with that. However, that process needs a lot of support. And I think that what Thomas's work is and what Kosha is doing, it provides so much support and kind of loving attention to this sense of pain and suffering. And in our work, I would say that there's a little bit of maybe prejudice towards, okay, this is where we are now. This is what it feels like to be now in this body, in this social body. Now what? Like, what is possible from where we are? So it doesn't quite spend the same amount of attention on how we got here. And yet, I think that part is so important and something that we're trying to learn more about.
All right. Thank you so much for that answer. And I just want to also just make a note of your presence, because it's also really serving to ground me in this moment, and I'm grateful for that. But this thread of seeing and sensing also very much echoes for me the witnessing capacity that is Kosha, that I know you work with so much. And I'm curious also about there seems such an intersection. And I also appreciate this distinction between what's possible and how what brought us to this moment. And to the extent possible, being with the truth of that, however it is present to us in the moment, and the freedom of that, the freedom of being with that truth, the liberation in a way to really be as authentically as we can with that truth, to then sense into what's possible. Kosha, I wonder if you speak a little bit about this, the witnessing function.
Yeah, I think I'll get there.
Or wherever you want to go.
Also to just build on what
wherever
Arawana
you want
just
to
said.
go, I welcome that, please.
So I feel like I'm more completely with you, Arawana, than just to be perfectly transparent here. This is the first time that Arawana and I actually meet. So bear with us. We're just getting to know each other. And this is going to be the first time of more times that we're going to have this conversation, for sure. And thank you, Natasha and Lawrence, for bringing us together. So the possibility of what is possible, this is actually what I lost my thread there a bit when I was speaking about my transition from the Global Eco-Village Network to the Pocket Project. What shifted me was traveling the world over and seeing people with the highest intentions, the clearest intentions, the highest wishes for a better future, run into the sand in the system, where in our communities, in our projects, in our organizations, we run into the sand in the system without being able to see it. And I've watched the most beautiful organizations flounder because of conflict, money, power issues, the strangest things popping up from seemingly the underbelly where we didn't know they were, right? But dampening our efforts. And at some point, and I saw that I experienced the same thing in the United Nations climate negotiations, which I've been at those conferences for 15 years, watched the best solutions being developed and not being manifested. So coming from all that is the place from where I turn my eyes not towards so much the pain in the system, but the part that is absenced, maybe the part that is not immediately visible to us, but that is actually moving a lot of what is happening in the system. And in each of us and in each of our bodies, I think we bring together a stream of wisdom and presence and a stream of absence and trauma, to put it very bluntly. And this stream here, which is probably less stream and more frozen territory, there's good stuff in there. Very often there's a layer of pain around it, maybe fear of very, very intense emotions. It was too much to be processed in that particular moment, or even right now. We have our friends in Ukraine, we have our friends in Syria and Turkey after the earthquake. Right now, we have our friends in Malawi and Mozambique where the storms have been hitting, so it's happening right now. And sometimes there's just too much to be processed alone. And we have forgotten that we can only process this together. This is where the collective body is so needed, because none of us can process the intensity of this alone. And that we can actually support each other in that, so that what might look like trauma work is actually a love fest. You know, it's a turning towards each other. It's a turning towards myself, that I am allowed to feel the world. And we can support each other in this. And it's that intersection of the joy and the places that I can't feel, where I don't even know whether it's pain or it might be my highest potential that's in there. You know, there's a lot of like the treasure that the dragon sits on. That's what we're speaking about. You know, that's what's in the iceberg. And we need to dig out this treasure, but it's hidden under a very intelligent layer of protection because it's so intense to go there. So this is about an adventure journey in the presence to the, you know, I would say the parts in us, the parts in our social body and in our world that we haven't yet traveled to and that are waiting to be presenced in the now. So it's very much happening in the now. And, you know, I feel like a lot of the work that you do, Arawana, is actually coming from that place and speaking into and out of that. You know, we have different words, but it's what you're working with. And yeah, and there's this constant titration happening between going to the presence and the well-being and the being there with each other and for each other. Also resourcing ourselves with what is good for us, music and movement and beauty and art, and then bringing all of that to going to a place that might be uncomfortable to look at. Yeah. And, you know, just to bring in the witnessing, I feel like I've spoken about it on the edges, Lawrence, but it's like, you know, to be in the depth, our witnessing presence is to start to be able to see where the edge is between, in me, between what I can be present to and what I cannot be present to. And bringing, yeah, and I could say more about the witnessing presence that we can gift each other with in the world and how we can help each other to stay resourced by really being present to each other. But maybe I'll get back to that later.
Arawana, I do have a follow-up question, but I'm curious if you had anything you wanted to respond to what Kosha said.
No, it's so beautifully expressed. And I was circling back, Lawrence, to what you said about stuck practice. And this sense of the blind spot, that we don't actually know what we we can't access. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed in this, which is that the practice would be that we experience that there are forces that keep us from moving forward, doing what it is, creating what it is that we're making in the world, or how to go forward. There are forces, both internal, things that have happened that we hold in the body-mind system, as well as external, you know, systemic racism, systemic injustice and inequality, right? And all of these are pressing in a certain way, or stretching out, or pulling us back, or twisting us in one way or the other. So that the stuck is more working with how I experience both inner and external forces that are keeping me from moving, basically. So we set that up in this, and that can be anything, you know, there are historic forces, there are collective forces, and they're just ordinary things in ourselves, our own fears and anxieties, whatever, that keep us stuck somewhere, right? And it's not like a psychodrama. It's more that the body shape, what is the shape of the body, the sculpture that could best embody this stuck situation. And then the sense of it is that if you don't have a goal about getting out, so I loved, Kosha, what you said, it's like leaning into the edge of not knowing, or leaning into where there's discomfort or fearfulness or frozenness or whatever, leaning into that feeling without the story, right? And then letting the body, and if there's several bodies in this sculpture, the sculpture could be made of several bodies or one body, letting that sense of the social or individual body, if you didn't talk or think about it, where in the body does it need to move? Because stuck is not sustainable. It's not a sustainable situation, right? Nothing in nature is stuck. Everything is either like being born or dying, so it's moving. So where in this sculpture does it just, it's not sustainable. And that starts the gesture, which then moves along and it ends up somewhere else. And then it's just a reflection. Again, what word comes to mind? What phrase comes to mind? Pops up, you know, without thinking about it on a first thought, best thought way, that the sculpture has something to say. It's not like I have something to say. It's the sculpture has something it has to say. And this could be collective with multiple voices, and the different aspects of the social sculpture have something to say. Then it becomes a kind of reflection tool in terms of, you know, what actually is happening there. So this, in a funny way, the witness and the doer role gets, is porous, let's say. And I've had amazing times where I made just an individual stuck, and there's two guys in my little breakout group that reflect back what they saw or what they felt. They never say what they think I did or felt, but they say what they felt or what they saw. And it's unbelievable how some complete stranger who does not know my situation, I haven't revealed that, how insightful, how they know something that I can't access. But as soon as I hear it, I know that it's a knowing that I have, but I can't access. But somebody else sees it, somebody else feels it, and it opens up something for me. So I think when I hear you talk about witness, that's my experience with the stuck. Yeah.
And we've run a version of this stuck practice so many times, and with the mirroring, and for me that's at the heart of the witnessing function in a way, because it's so incredibly intimate to have another person mirror your movement. You know, it's not that they're just sitting there kind of feeling you, they're actually moving the way that you're moving, and then feeling what's present for them in that process. And it's an incredible form of witnessing. But I'm curious also, because you had this beautiful image of the pen and the cap, like the head and the body coming together. And so there's something here that's really speaking to the intelligence of the body, and also I think very much about, at least as far as I understand in your work, Arawana, the body's capacity to sense and feel a system, and I think there's something quite, maybe to many people it's like, well, of course, but there's also something that for many people, at least in the world today, it seems that's quite novel, and I'm curious to hear from you a little more about this capacity for the body to have an intelligence and to sense and feel a system? Like how does that work?
I haven't a clue how that works. I do know it works.
It does work, right? Exactly, it does work.
But I don't, it's a human capacity, right? That maybe could use a little cultivation or a little recognition, a little shout out to the capacity that we actually have to know through our sense perceptions what we see, what we hear, what we feel is not the same as what we think about it. They both are important. How we make sense of it, how we interpret it, how we make it useful. This is important, but it is not the same as experience. So we distinguish between the sense experience, that kind of knowing, and then the making sense of that, the interpretation and the definition and all of that. And we're very careful in our work to try to bring those two things, to give them each their due, but to not mush them together. And I'm not sure, I'm curious, Kosha, about your work in terms of that relationship of what we might call like perceptual experience, or which is what we mean by the word sensing, and then sense making from that in terms of how the process of healing actually would work. Healing is not one of the words that we particularly use with our work, although many people who do it say that it's healing. That's not my background, and I don't feel confident to use that. But so I'm very interested in how your work with the body, what the process of healing is, or even what you mean by healing. That would be interesting for me also.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just trying to see how to express this. I think right at the beginning, I spoke about the body as having a nervous system that goes beyond ourself. And that, I'm experiencing this as we do more of the ancestral work, for instance, with Thomas Hübl, how literally it feels as if my awareness for the part of me, because I'm aware that I'm actually carrying my ancestors within me in my DNA, right? And there's more and more epigenetic work which is showing us that the experiences of my ancestors have huge effects on the next generations. So we literally carry our ancestral experiences in this body. We also have the work of Rupert Sheldrake and others showing that we literally, when something happens in a collective body, there is a resonance phenomena, and I would say science is at the beginning of being able to prove this, but we know that if a group meditates, crime rates fall. How does this happen really? What is the system that this moves through? So I believe just as you brought the pen and the lid together, I feel that if we bring our sensing capacity of our nervous systems into resonance with each other, is when we start building an alive collective body where we build coherence. And just as when we start building coherence here between the lid and the pen, there is actually more energy that is able to start flowing through the whole system. And therefore, when more energy starts flowing through, more is It's like a river that starts flowing again, which draws in the frozen edges, kind of draws it back into the stream. And it's a very slow melting process where automatically things that were previously unconscious start arising in our presence and our consciousness. So for us, sense making is actually where what we speak, what we think, and what we sense come into alignment. A very powerful place where we become a creative force. And the same in the collective body, like when we plug into each other, like that pen on the lid, but now we're all doing it together, like right here, right now in this field. We can do it amongst the three of us or here in the field. If we just take a moment again to come to the body, because this happens through the body. I'm just feeling into the collective body. That there is something that starts growing in us, and it's and in that space, more world becomes available to us. We literally start feeling more about each other. More can appear in the spaces between us that was previously unconscious. So, so as you said so beautifully, Arawana, there's a constant coming together of witnessing and doing, because it's actually it's an active agent. This kind of sensing of witnessing is an active agent that floods our collective body as we bring it in, and it starts washing out previously unconscious material. So often we are surprised in our group processes that when we have a lot of insights and awareness and, beautiful, like light flowing in, that then something difficult arises next in the group. And we can watch this happening in intense group processes, where then it's like that light allows the next layer to come to the surface. And then we need that resourcing again to hold a larger space of coherence that can allow that to take space amongst us. And allow that stuckness, the next layer of stuckness, to be felt in that embodied presence. So I feel like the work that you do, Arawana, is the work that we need in our collective trauma integration processes, It's like, yeah, and that's how the process, the healing in a way naturally emerges from the system feeling itself. And that sense making of bringing more coherence to self, to other, to group, even just the I feel you, my nervous system starts feeling your nervous system as we sit here speaking. Yeah.
It was the word that that you used, Arawana, about you said cultivation, that you would love to see more of this cultivated in the world. And what's really present for me, of course, between both what both of you are sharing is it's this inquiry that's really at the heart of my life too, and at the heart of my work, is how do you cultivate these capacities, this capacity at least to have a relationship with the intelligence of the body, and an awareness of the sensing capacity, and then a discovery of what that offers, because I think it's very much a very personal discovery. Nobody can tell you, what it offers. You have to somehow discover it yourself. And I'm curious about your, we're coming to the top of our hour now. I'm curious about your observations about teaching this work or creating the conditions for people to discover it, particularly online. Obviously, our whole world has changed over the last 3 years, and now so much of what was almost exclusively done in person is now also being done online. So any highlights? What have you really observed about working with embodiment, attunement, movement, and sharing this work online?
Do you want to go ahead, Kosha?
I can keep it short because I know you also will be leading us into an embodiment practice, so you could just lead into that probably. Yeah, so for us, it's really this, creating spaces of safety together that allow us to become more friendly to ourselves and to go back to that willingness to feel. And I just see Ronald, who just shared about the pain, the chronic nerve pain he's been suffering from, and knowing how many, the first thing I would say is our body is telling us all the time, come back, come home, I'm here, I need you, come back, this is the doorway. There's a constant calling out, and it's also our planet is calling out the whole time. We're calling out to each other the whole time, so there's like constantly an inner voice that is bringing us, but it's a place of discomfort first. Because there's discomfort in our bodies at this time, and sometimes we take that personally, but it's an expression of what we have done to each other and to the planet. There is a discomfort that we're all sitting in, and that might bring fear up as well as we go deep into our bodies. So the coming together and the doing this work together is, I feel, the biggest resource we have, whether we're online or offline. And I love having as many people as possible present in a field who've done a lot of this work, because they resource all of us. So having you here, Arawana, with your practice is like a resource, right? Because you're teaching us as you speak through your body about embodiment, like you're effusing it into the space. And this is, so creating spaces where we do this in a multitude of ways, creating safe spaces and gifting our embodiment and our sensing of each other to each other is a wonderful entrance door.
Thank you, Kosha. Arawana, would you like to share something?
I think I would just second and agree so wholeheartedly with what Kosha said, that creating spaces as Pocket Project and Thomas have done with their programs and their gatherings, and likewise with Presencing Institute, these online free of charge gatherings for people to come together. We just finished one this morning, Antoinette and I and others, using one of our methodologies, which is called 4D mapping or systems mapping, on a story or a case about forest, saving of forest in Mexico, where the water, so that people there would have water. So I think the gatherings, really being able to acknowledge and celebrate and bring forth the many people on this planet who are doing amazing work. We tend in the news to see the ones that are, to see the degree of suffering and conflict and stupidity and aggression in the world. But there's so many of us that get up in the morning and really have a strong intention to be of benefit. And as Kosha said, to extend this awareness of care, which we call in Presencing the social field. So cultivation of the social field by just listening, by being present, by, just forgetting to have all of our opinions. So many ways every day that we contribute to cultivating the healthy social field of care on the planet, I think is any encouragement that we can do. I really 2 years ago, 3 years ago, would have just really not liked the idea that we're doing embodiment work online, social presencing theater online. But we get up and we think it's accessible to people. You know, it brings in more people. It allows for more people to join. You don't have to travel and all of this business. So yeah, I think that if we wake up, every one of us here in the morning, and our job description is to, you know, create a healthy social field, create a good society, co-create, that we have the power of our own presence and our own kindness and courage to do that, that we're not like helpless in terms of the systems. It's then, and then to get this kind of wonderful support, for instance, that Kosha and Thomas are offering, I think, so that all of us can contribute fully. That's what I think we're all somewhat, what Sutra does also, right? We build these containers or platforms for people to come together. That seems like cultivation at this point.
Yeah, and I deeply resonate with that. And also just to share, I also sometimes have this dilemma that people should spend more time offline rather than in front of their computers. But the other side of that is the opportunity, the reach to be able to touch people with work that they otherwise would not have access to. And we've brought versions of, I mean, so many variations. I've taken a lot of creative liberty, but so many variations of the social presencing work that theater work that you've introduced into online spaces, and having incredible, truly, I think that's what really creates the spaces that we support, makes them transformational, is working with these kinds of embodied practices online. So it's amazing how that works. And that being said, I'd love to, so what we would like to do now is go into some breakout groups to invite the audience to reflect on what's emerging for you, anything that's been shared, any reflections or questions you might have. So we're going to come back and open it up to audience questions. And Arawana, I don't know if you feel inspired at all to maybe like a 3 or 4 minute grounding practice that you might share with us.
Maybe we do something simple, right? Each of us, is everyone sitting in a chair more or less? Yeah.
Yeah, Natasha, can you put us into gallery view?
So wherever you are, at whatever sitting shape you are right now, just tune into that. What does it actually feel like? And I'm going to ask you to particularly feel the back of the body. That you have a sense that the back of your head is present, the back of the neck is present, and the space behind your heart, your middle back, your low back, to the seat, to the backs of your legs, to your heels. And in a way, if you don't mind, if you just turn away from the screen a little, please, I would like you to leave your eyes open. They can be downcast a little, but that you're in contact with your actual world, your visual world. And can I ask you to just very much let your eyes, which are open, rest in your eyes. In other words, you're not going to grasp out into the space with your eyes for some visual frame of reference. Sometimes that's called this soft gaze. This is particularly important when we work online on the screen, that we do not get seduced into this screen, into our visual world, to the extent that we lose track of our back body, of our own strength. We don't lose track of our own heart and our own belly. Can I ask you now to just shift your body to another sitting shape. It can be anything. Just shift your and make another sitting shape. Just attend to the feeling of that shape. Its back. Where are its arms and hands? So it's a living, breathing shape that's resting on this earth. Once more, using your mindfulness, which is mainly the mind's attention, can you please just take a moment and make some movement, a stretching or bending or jiggling or wiggling or whatever you'd like. Just make some movement, but stay with it. How does it feel now? And now, and now, and now. And then let it rest back into another sitting shape. Once more, the question is, what does this body feel like doing now? Given the parameter that we're sitting in the chair in front of the screen in this community. Okay, what does this shape want to do now? And then please notice where the movement begins and just begin to move. Do whatever you would like that the body feels like doing at the moment. Stay with the activity until it comes to a rest in another shape. Once more before we close this. What does the body feel like doing? You're letting the body's voice be louder and your mind's voice, the one that says, oh, I should do this, I should do that, letting that one be quiet. What does the body want to do? It's a little restorative justice project. We're giving the body a louder voice and the mind a quieter one, and let it come to a shape. And if this shape had something to say, a word, what would that be? What does this shape want to say right now? Because the body's language is feeling, is sensation. But we often want it to translate into an image or a word. So just say the word to yourself. And just dissolve that, let it go. And I turn it over to our Zoom host to put us in our breakout groups. Thank you very much for spending a little bit of time doing something really ordinary.
Thank you, Arawana. Yes, so now we're going to give you a chance to connect with each other, to share your resonance with what's being shared here in this conversation. What's inspiring you? What are you taking away? And then we'll come back and have time to ask questions and go deeper into some of the things you might still be curious about. So this is just going to be a short breakout, just 5 minutes. And hopefully you'll be at least with one other person, maybe with two. So enjoy connecting with each other. And we'll see you back here in about 5 minutes. And just one reminder that Zoom sometimes takes a moment for everybody to transition into the room. So if you're just there alone for a moment, just give it a minute and hopefully your partner will show up. So here we go. Enjoy connecting and we'll see you back here in 5 minutes.
Formed and trauma integrating. There's a lot of mutual work that could emerge. Yeah.
Hold on. Sorry, Lorenza, just muted. If you could just unmute. Thanks.
Welcome back, everybody. And we have about 15 minutes left together. And I would love to open up the rest of our time together for any reflections or any questions you might have. If you'd like to speak, you can click on the reactions button at the bottom of the screen, and there's a raise hand function. And we would love to hear from a few people. Would anyone like to share?
Roberta, go ahead.
Thank you. It's a question for any of you. When you're in a group situation, planning or facilitating, and something comes up that there's a disturbance in the body, in the mind, how do you choose your response? You know, yeah. When do you decide something for me to just be with in my body, or say hello ancestors, or express, or be curious? Like, it's just a little bit about how you make those decisions. Thank you.
Kosha, Arawana, do either of you feel inspired to take that? Kosha, go ahead.
Yeah, I could just say, you know, it's like when we spoke before about the complexity of what the body knows, you know, and this is a huge skill that you're speaking to, right? First, you need to notice that there's discomfort, develop your interest for it, and then this learning to see what is this. What is the information that is actually landing in me? I think it's a very intuitive process. And there's exactly what, you know, so you brought a lot of wisdom in the way you brought the question, in that this could be a personal aspect that is triggered in my more individual aspect of my trauma. It could be part of an ancestral field. It can be that I'm reading the field of the collective, and I'm feeling something that is there. And, you know, Thomas is just leading a collective trauma facilitator training. It's a pilot training because this is really new work. It's like on the edge of our awareness, learning to use our nervous systems as very refined tools to become able to distinguish that. And I do believe that we do a lot of this instinctively, intuitively, you know, that we know a lot, but it is something that can be refined and really practiced together. So yeah, and we respond differently depending on where the information is speaking from. Yeah, so far. A lot more. We could spend a day on that. Yeah.
Next workshop. Thank you, Kosha. And Eve from Ohio.
Hi, thank you so much for this. It's really an amazing experience. My interest follows up on that previous question, Kosha, when you were talking about doing the collective work and how there's the moment of healing, and then something else comes in, and what that brought up for me is this idea of, like, with each layer of healing, it calls up another beast. And, you know, I have like beast in quotes here, and we sing to it, and we are ready with love. That's what I heard. That's what I felt from what you were talking about. But I'm curious if you have like a quick example of something like that happening, like where, you know, you were in a collective, a group, and like one of the beasts showed up, the collective trauma, and like, what was it like to move through it?
Yeah, firstly, you express it so beautifully, Eva. And it's a big question. You know, I can give an example. We had a collective trauma integration process in Germany last year, which was 350 to 400 adults looking at some of the polarization that's been happening in German society around refugees arriving, around COVID, vaccinations, you know, this kind of stuff, and just how heavily polarized the voices are. And, you know, so starting by creating a coherent group field is the beginning. And that is, you know, just that in itself is kind of a healing movement. So, you know, to speak about healing, we would say it's always a movement. It never stops, right? It's more like a river flow, bringing more energy back into the river flow, you know. But so coherence building is that healing movement of a more coherent space coming into being. And then the voices of dissonance are allowed to be heard. And as we hear them, there might be a shock in the system. You know, we had a woman who felt safe enough to bring that when she saw Ukrainian refugees arrive, that she actually experiences her body withdrawing and that she wants to turn away and go away. So, you know, this is a very difficult feeling to express, right? Because it edges on Fremdenfeind, you know, being unfriendly to foreigners, you know, it's like very hot topic. And then as we brought our shared witnessing presence to that, and Thomas actually worked with her in that moment to start realizing that her mother and her grandmother were refugees coming in from the Ukrainian region after the Second World War into Germany. So that there is some kind of remembrance that is triggered in that moment, you know. So this is like a voice of dissonance emerging from a situation of healing. And then with people being, the whole group being allowed to see this deeper root of where her dissonant voice comes from, there's like an embrace of healing, presence coming to that root of pain that, you know, goes into our ancestral system. And then the next level of coherence arises and so forth. Yeah, so that's just, yeah, I'd love to go more, but thank you for the question. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you. Alan?
This is a question for Arawana. I really appreciated the sitting movements, pauses, and the emphasis on the back. And the question is, given the limitations and the possibilities of online, on Zoom, the possibility of actually doing a full movement with the legs. I'm learning a new Qigong called Dancing Dao, and I can realize how the importance of the legs in actually supporting every movement we make. So are you suggesting some possibilities for people by themselves, not together, to experience even more of their body as a possibility, as that possibility?
Alan, most of the work is done standing up or
Yes.
on the ground or lying down. There's a lot of activity most of the time.
Yes.
So the sense of the support body and then the kind of expressive heart body and then the vision body is very much part of our training. So in this little practice today, we, in such a short amount of time, sometimes it's easier just to move around in the chair. But yes, of course. Please just bring all the legs you want into it.
Okay.
And most people are not set up on the screen to see the body. And not only that, the further away you get from the screen, the less the feeling quality of the person comes through. So you can see the figure, but you can't feel them as well. So it's for us, we've had to sort of figure out where in the screen is there both the most visible part of the body, the most visible, and you can feel them. And so that there's a kind of spot there where that works for most people. But by all means, I often send people away from the screen and then they do something and then they come back and they talk about it. I have no idea what they're doing, but doing something and presumably hope with their whole body. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I
Great to
really
see you.
appreciate that distinction of being close enough to feel the person and far enough to see them. I have never thought of it quite that way before. I just learned something very new. Thank you, Arawana. Judith, welcome. So good to see you today.
Yeah, I find it so incredible to have to see the interaction between you and Kosha, because after 2 years of training on both sides, it's as if the presencing is opening the incredible complexity of things and just being absolutely relevant. And whenever you speak Arawana, the whole simplicity of wisdom arises in me, and this incredible trust in the body and in the present moment to be just enough, and this relational dimension to it. So it is a reframe of you. Talking to each other is giving me so much additional confidence that within this huge complexity, we're actually wonderfully guided by our bodies and by this presence. And I wanted to share this to remember myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. I very much resonate and feel the same way. And Beth, would you like to share? We might have time for just you. You are on mute, I believe.
Trying to make it a more succinct, quick question, and that would be to just share, thank you, and share your thoughts on creating conditions where both leaning into the trauma and lightening up gives room for both of those things. Stop there.
Shall I go?
Go for it, Kosha.
Yeah. So, we've been speaking about this, the light and love and the unknown, right? And there is so much joy in including more of ourselves on all levels, so this leaning in when and I loved what Judith brought before, the simplicity of the being present with and leaning in. There is such a joy in including more of who we are and who we always were. And in any moment where it feels like we're going to some of the more challenging places or the so-called difficult places, there is an opening to the inner wisdom of the body, but also, we also consciously invite in the light as a form of lightness, the future, the light, that this really helps us hold a bigger space that enables this integration and the melting to happen more easily. So it becomes the most joyful journey of all, because we're no longer having to keep stuff under the carpet. For me, it's the most joyful journey of all, to be in this path of including more and more. Yeah.
Thank you, Kosha.
Thank you.
And I want to be mindful of the time. Kosha, I know you have an upcoming trauma-informed women's leadership program. Maybe you can just share a couple of words about that before we wrap up. You are on mute.
I just wanted to let you all know that we are this summer inviting to a trauma-informed women in leadership training. So we've been leading a trauma-informed leadership training in the past 2 summers. And we currently have a questionnaire still open until Saturday for everyone who is interested in this work to just let us know what you would most like to see happening. And we're going to offer 3 free places to all the people who are filling in the questionnaire. So it's an invitation to you to go for it. And yeah, in that training, we'll have 100 women from Ukraine. We'll have 20 women from Syria. We'll have women from around the world participating, from the Global South, and many more people. So just warm invitation to all of you. And also we offer regular global social witnessing calls for free to different areas, and also community of practice calls to bring out skill sharing, practicing together, which you're so warmly invited to. It's all for free. So just visit us and join us for that.
Thank you, Kosha. And Arawana, I know you have an in-person training in Berlin. Maybe you could just share a couple of words about that.
I can't remember when it is, so I should look. It's sometime, it's May.
Mid-May.
Yes, in the middle of May. It's on the uschool.org website. And I'm just so appreciative of this time together, and hope that I can also join and learn, Kosha, from you and this wonderful offering for women. And I wanted to say, just maybe as my last thing, that it's very, sometimes I feel the work takes patience, and it takes ambiguity and not having a solution always. And so that sense of being okay that it isn't solved and it hasn't landed and it's just suspended is still a kind of wisdom, I think. It's a kind of knowing. So I really appreciate this conversation so much. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I just also want to thank you all from my side, Lawrence. Just thank you for inviting us here. Thank you so much, Arawana. It's been lovely, and I really look forward to learning from you. I'm already thinking about which program I could come to, so really looking forward to an ongoing conversation here. And yeah, the melting of the spaces between us. So thank you all for being here with your presence. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Natasha.
And thank you so much, Kosha, Arawana, and Lorenz, and to all of you for your presence and your sharing and questions. And someone asked before, can we take this and use it in our spaces? And yes, please, if there's anything that you've learned here or want to try out, please go and share it and try it and experiment with it. And hopefully it has an impact in the communities you work with. And maybe just as a checkout before we sign off, I would love to invite you to just share one word, 1 or 2 words in the chat of what's present for you right now as you leave this session. What's present for you? Gratitude, inspiration, healing joy, warmth, joy, depth, letting in light, wholeness, spacious simplicity, movement, the body, calm and connection, heart, deeply nourished, life enjoying, well-being, body wisdom, love, and lots of gratitude and more curiosity, feeling alive. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And feel free to unmute and just say goodbye into our space. And again, thank you so much to our panelists, to Kosha, Arawana, and
Thank
to
you.
Lorenz. Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. This was so rich.
Bye
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.